Hey, how's it going everyone? In today's video, we're going to create a to-do list using React. And not just React, we're also going to use, well, not CSS, but we're going to use styled components, meaning that I'm going to style everything using only styled components. Everything that you see here, this is the project. We can add something to it. Let's say we're going to go home, then walk the dog, then do homeworks, my favorite thing to do, homework, and take a nap. There we go. So let's say we already took a nap, so I'm going to click on it. This is going to give me a little bit of animation, and also a delete icon will appear on the right side. Now if I want to click this icon, first I'm going to get a notification. Then are you sure that you want to delete it? If you're not sure, then you're going to cancel it. It's also going to cancel the checked marked. So if I want to delete it, check it again, and then I can delete it. Also, if we would delete something in the middle of it, then we can just do that one and the numeration here. So you can see this is 1, this is 2. If I would add another one, let's say paint the garage. I don't have a garage, but let's say I want to paint my garage. Then number 2, and do your homework. I did my homework, and I would delete this number 2. Then number 3 will change to number 2. Also, if I want to add a item and I don't have anything in here, I want to click on this. It's not going to let me. The alert will appear. So let's delete here everything, and let's say we are good to go. And this means we can now open up a file. I'm just going to create here a code folder called code. Let's open up a terminal. Right, so let's install our application. Let's say we're going to do npx create-react-app. I'm going to call it todo-list. Let's hit enter. And I'm going to speed up this process. So see you when this is done. Okay, now we're back. So we are done with installing our application. Now let's cd change directory into that application. I'm just going to hit tab, which is going to bring me into my folder. And then I'm going to npm I install, that is, the packages that I'm going to need. And one of the packages will be styled -components. So let's hit enter. And you know what? I'm going to resize this a bit. So let's go to the right side, and also I'm going to close the left side for now. So you can better see what I'm installing here. So I just installed style components. And next, also, if you take a look now in your folder, you should see then your package.json, you have style components installed. Okay, next up, let's install React icons. So npm I react-icons. And I'm going to move you to the right side again. And this is basically enough. And now we should also see just in a couple of seconds, there we go, React icons version 5.0.1. So I'm going to close up package.json and now npm start in order to start our application. Okay, now we have all the React icon here, so I'm just going to go to source, go to app, and delete everything that is in the app folder. I don't need it actually. So first we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this components. And in components, we're going to create now a new file called todo, which is going to be the very first component, and then a list, and then j.jsx. Okay, let's do here rfc, and this is where React functional component, and this is where our list will live. So let's quickly create our list first of all. And let's also bring the list into our application. So I'm going to go back to our application, go down between the divs, and let's see that I'm going to bring here the component of to-do list and close it up. And this should also bring it in here automatically. Now, if this didn't happen for you, then you need to import to-do list, and that is from your components.components and /to-do list. So there's our to-do list. Now we can start out by populating our to-do list. So I'm going to go into my to-do list and wrap this to-do list into an H1. Let's cut it out. Also going to add here a dash and here a space after to-do. So there's our to-do list. Next I'm going to create a form. It's not going to have any kind of action, but it's going to have a onSubmit event, which for now will do absolutely nothing. So I'm just going to leave here an empty string. Next, I'm going to have an input tag. And the input tag will be basically, if you take a look in our finished project, this right here. So whatever item we want to add to our list. Now you can leave the type as text, but because I know that the default is text, I'm going to delete this and have just less code for us, because the default type of any input is actually text. So next we're going to leave this as it is. We could just add a placeholder if you want with add to do, hit save, and let's go back, and there we go. We should see our to do. Now after our to do, we need a input. We need a little button like this add button, which is going to signify that we can add something. So let's create here a button. And now this is very important. The button needs to be the type of submit in order for the button to submit then our form. And now we can just type in here a add as a text, and if we click on the button, you can see that this is refreshing, meaning that form is submitting. Now I do want to stop the submission, to stop that refresh, so I'm going to go up here and create a const. I'm going to call this handle submit, assign it to an arrow function, taking the event, just going to type in E for shortcut event, and then I'm going to e.prevent default, which will prevent the default behavior of the form, which is to submit. Now I can pass my event down here, and now if I click on add, nothing will happen. So I can also just console log here the string of submit and just output it in here in our console. And let's just try this out. There we go, console log submit. Excellent. Now I'm going to close up the console. We know that the form is submitting. The next step that we need to do is to output our submits, which will then happen in a list. And so I'm going to create an unordered list, and within the list we're going to have our list items with to do 1, and I'm just going to copy this, paste it in here, to do 2, and let's create another one, to do 3, just to signify that these are our to-dos. So the list items will actually come from another component, which will be the to-do item. But for now, we're going to concentrate on styling our little to-do list here. Now for this, we're going to import style components. We're going to import styled from React, actually styled components. So from the library. And now we can use style components in order to create our own style for this list. So I'm going to go ahead and create such a style component. We're going to create it using a variable with the name of, let's call it to do list and style. And I'm going to assign it to styled, so to the property. And now I'm going to create here a div. Now open and close backticks. And I'm going to start up by styling the component. But first I'm going to add it and replace this div with my style component. So instead of having this div, I'm going to just replace it with the style component, which is actually a div. But now whatever style I'm going to pass into this div will be applied to my component. Meaning I could now create here a margin of 0 top and bottom and auto left and right. So hit save. And let's start out by adding a padding. I'm going to add an all-around padding of 1 rem, then a width of 500 pixels. Let's do a background color of hash and 1411414, which is a dark color. Now let's add a border radius of 5 pixels. And because you saw in the finished project that this was actually a green color, I'm going to go ahead, go outside of my const and actually go into my function right here. And the very first thing that I'm going to do is grab onto the document .body.style and assign this to the color, to the background color, or you could just use background. And I'm going to go ahead and type in here hexadecimal number of 3 a D4B0, giving me a light green color. Now let's go back to our style components, so to our to-do list style. Let's also add a bit of box shadow to this, so box shadow. I'm going to go ahead, create a 0015 pixels and a RGBA of 0.0.0 and 0.2. And this should be enough as a box shadow. And now we can grab onto the H1. So in our div, in our style component, we have an H1, and we can go ahead and grab onto it because style components allow nesting. So we can go ahead and grab onto the H1 and give it the color of DDD. And this will give me a white color for my title. Let's go ahead and align the text to the center. Then give it a margin to the bottom of 2 rem. We can go out of this, and now let's grab onto the form. Now the form should be displayed as flex. We're going to justify the content as center. Align the items, center. And we're going to also give this a margin to the bottom of 1.5 rem. Okay, next up, remaining within our form, I'm going to grab onto the input text. Again, I'm going to use nesting. We're going to add some padding to the input text. Let's say 0.5 all around padding. And let me just close up the terminal. I no longer need it. Let's add a background of hash DDD. Now let's grab onto the borders and let's change them to none. And let's add a border radius of 5 pixels, and there we go. That's much better. You know what? I want to have these two borders as a rectangle, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on with 0, 0, and 5 pixels, and this should give me a rectangular border. Now I'm going to change the width to only 80% of its container, and then I'm going to add a transition of all properties to 0.3 seconds and ease in out. Okay, next up, I'm going to add a hover effect. So we're going to use the parent selector, ampersand, and when I'm hovering over the input, I want the background to change to a white color. So let's take a look. If we hover over the background, you can see this is changing, signifying that we can interact now with the background. So let's go even further. I'm going to copy this and say that if I'm active on that background, so if I click in here, then the background should remain white, and also the outline should be none, because I hate that outline. Now let's do the same thing for focus, and there we go. Now the last thing is to style our button. So we're going to remain within the form, but outside the input. So let's grab onto the button tag. And again, I'm going to take out the borders. We're going to set them to none. Let's scroll up a bit. Let's add a bit of padding. We're going to add padding of 0.5 rem top and bottom and 1 rem left and right. Now let's add a border radius, and it's going to be exactly the reverse border radius as we had up here. So we're going to copy this, paste it in here, but this will be 0. This will be 5 pixels. This will be 5 pixels, and this will be 0, giving me a border to the right and to the right top and bottom corner, and no borders to the left and right corner, to the left top and left bottom corner. Now let's change the color. I'm going to give it the same color as we have our little fellow here. So I can go ahead, and you know what? I'm going to go up here and create another const with primary and color. I'm going to assign this to our little green color here. Where's the green color? It's in the background. There we go. So I'm going to assign it to the string, and I'm going to use this color now as a variable down here. So the background will be that color, but this should be now in a $sign and a variable. And there we go. I'm having now that color right here. Now the color of the button will be a dark color. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the dark color. And the font weight will be, let's say, 600. That's a bit too much. Let's say 500. Yeah, let's go with 600. That's much better. Now the cursor should be pointer. And there we go. That's pretty much all that we need for our button. Next up, let's create our list item component. So let's go into components. And we're going to create here a to do and item dot JSX RFC, create a React functional component. We're going to bring in style again, import styled from styled components, and we're going to create here, actually let's go first of all down into our to-do item, and let's also bring this in. Let's go to to-do list, and instead of returning here a list item, I'm going to return a to-do item. Now this should import to-do item in the top. So let's verify to-do item was imported. So now I should see here a to-do item. Now let's first of all change the color. So I'm going to go into my component and create another const. I'm going to call this check. And we're going to call it to-do item and style. Let's assign it to styled dot. I'm going to create an li, and I'm just going to change here the color to, let's say, a white color. Okay, I'm going to replace to do item style with this, and there we go. We see our to do item style. Next up, I'm going to populate the to do item. I'm going to go into the to do item, and I'm going to create first of all a span tag, and this span tag will contain a h4, which is then going to contain the index, so the number is going to contain the number of the item that was added, and then I'm going to create an h3, which will contain the item itself, so the to do item. After our span tag, I'm going to create a button with the delete option. Now, this will not actually be a delete text, but it should be a icon. So let's import, and I'm going to import a icon from React icons. So from React icons, and I'm going to import it from the FA library. Now I'm going to go back between the curly brackets and import the FA and trash. There we go. Now I can use this as an icon instead of this delete. So I'm going to use it down here and close it up. And there we go. We have a little trash can. Now let's go ahead and style everything that we have in our to-do list item. So we're going to go up to the to-do item style and start up with a span tag. So the span tag will be displayed as flags because we have two items in there. And I'm going to use align item center. There we go. Now the span tag contains a h4, so I'm going to grab onto that and say that it should have a margin to the right of 1 rem. And the color of that item should be a little primary color. So I'm going to go back here and just copy this primary color and paste it in here. And I'm going to now use it as a variable in my color. And there we go. The number is now green. Also, we can see that we have our little disk there. So I'm going to go up here and change the property from list style type. And we're going to choose none. Now after h4, we have an h3. So let's grab onto that. And we're going to change the text decoration to line through. And you know what? I'm going to comment this part out because this will depend on a prop of an action that we're going to take if we're clicking this. So let's just leave it here as a comment and we're going to come back to this. Now let's move on. Underneath the color, we're going to add a border to each item. So just as you see here, we're going to add this green border. So let's say border. We're going to add a border of 1 pixel, solid, and again the primary color. So $ and primary color, just like using variables in CSS. If you don't know how to use variables in CSS, then I have an excellent video, so please check it out on my channel. Next, let's change the border radius. We're going to set this to 5 pixels. Then we're going to add a margin to the bottom of 1 rem, because if I bring in another item, so let's also bring in another item. Let's say I'm going to copy, let's go to to-do list, and instead of to-do number 2 and number 3, I'm going to add each of them a to-do item. Okay, let's go back to to-do items and back to styling, because we still need to display everything that's in here as flex, and then we're going to justify content as space between, meaning that it's going to push these 2 items to the left and the delete button to the right. Okay, and now we can add a transition all of 0.3 seconds and is in out, just as we had before. Now let's go ahead and style our button, which contains that little trash can. And first of all, I want the cursor to be pointer, and then the background color to be transparent. Okay, there we go. Our button is now transparent. Let's reduce the borders. Let's set them to none. Let's decrease the font size to 1 rem. And let's also change the color to the primary color. So primary color, and there we go. This should also have a transition transform of 0.3 seconds, because we are going to have an effect on this. And now let's add a hover effect. So when I'm going to hover over the button, I want to change the color of the button to a light red color. So I'm going to go with a hash of DD, no, just one D, D44A4 and A. And now hover over the button, this should be a light red color. Now forget to add a padding to this, so let's go up here to the list item that is. Let's add a padding of 0.35 rem, top and bottom, and 1 rem left and right. Now let's go down to our parent element. So let's go, for example, here. Let's create a parent selector. And let's say if we hover our element, then we're going to change the background color to the primary color, and the H4 and the button, so H4 and button tag will both have the color of the dark color. So we're going to go with that, let's say 111. Okay, so if I hover over them, those 2 will change colors, but the text will remain the same. One last thing, if this element has a class, so let's do another parent selector with the class of checked, then I want a animation to take effect. So let's do here a animation. And in order to use animations with style components, we need to bring in keyframes. We're going to go up to styled, comma, and just like bringing in a hook in React, for example, useState, we're going to bring in here keyframes. In order to use keyframes, you need to be at the very top level of a component. And let's say we're going to create a const of shrink. And I'm going to assign this to keyframes. And again, open and close backticks. And let's type in our keyframe between our backticks. So this one is going to go from 0% with a transform and scale of 1 to then 50%, where it's going to have I'm going to just copy this, a transform scale of 0.9, and then back to 100%, where it's going to have a scale of 1. So I'm going to use the transform scale of 1 again. Okay, so let's try this out. Well, now comes the part where I need to use my click event. So let's create an event that is going to listen for that click, and it's also going to handle that click if we're clicking on our item. So I'm going to go now. Oh yeah, and let's use our animation. So the shrink animation will be used now in our animation down here, we're going to use $, shrink, and it's going to take 0.3 seconds and ease in out just as each and every one of those effects. So now let's add the check to our to-do item. For this, I'm going to add to the item a on-click event. Now, if this event will be triggered, then a handle check item function will be triggered. So let's create this function. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to do a const handle check, and I'm going to assign it to an error function, which is going to take in the event. It actually doesn't need any kind of events. And now we need to set something. And in order to set something in React, we need our state. So I'm going to go up to React, first of all, and bring in useState as a hook. And I'm going to now create a state for our item if it's checked or not. So let's go down in our component and let's say const is checked and set is checked, basically creating also the setter. Now we need to assign this to useState, and within the state I'm actually going to check multiple things. So not only that this will upon completion set a completed option, going to set this to true, and this should become completed, but it's going to have multiple options. For example, the button will then appear, because you can see in your finished project, if you click on a item, only then will that button appear. So to do this, we need to have this as false for starters. Also, completed should be false as a default. And the last thing that I need is also the animation, but I'm going to leave this for now opened. So let's go back to our handle check item function. And actually this should be in here. What am I doing? Sorry about that. This should be in the return function, in the export default of to do item. So what is this going to do? Well, it's going to take our is checked and actually it's going to set is checked. And we're going to do here two things. First of all, we're going to set completed to not. So we're going to negate is checked dot completed, and then we're also going to negate the button, basically turning it into a true statement. So again, negation is checked, and from that I'm going to select the button. Now the button, as I said, should only be shown when I'm checking the items. So I'm going to wrap the button, the curly brackets, and use here is checked dot button. Only if this is true, and now ampersand, will the button be shown. Now, in order for this to be set as line through, we're going to go up to our style, and when we have this text decoration line through, I'm going to comment it back in, and now I'm going to use props. So we're going to wrap this into curly brackets and a $, and we're going to create an anonymous function, send in props, then an arrow function, and if props dot checked, then I'm going to set this, I'm going to close up the left part, we don't need this anymore. I'm going to cut this and paste it in here as a string, and if this is, it should be a question mark. And if it's not true, then nothing, but we could also do something like only if this is true, then the other one is true, else nothing. Okay, so now if I click on, actually, now we need to use our prop. So checked, we need to use it as a prop because this is now a prop of the to do. So I can set this as checked. But what this will do is it is add checked to each and every item. So what we need to do is actually destructure here the function of checked, or the prop of checked, and we're going to add it in another set of curly brackets, and we're going to ask it, this is only true if is checked.completed is true. So now if I click on, if I click on the first one, it's going to have a line through as a text decoration, and also the delete button will appear. Now I can also click it, and this is going to uncheck my item. So what we need to do now is actually also change the color, because this should be gray when I'm checking it. So let's go up in a component, in a style component, and where we have this color, again, I'm going to use props. So I'm going to copy this. Oh, actually, no. Let's do it the old school way. So I'm going to add here props, then a anonymous arrow function, and open close parentheses, and if props dot checked, then the color is gray, and if not, then the color is #DDD. Or you know what, let's use FFS. So if I'm going to check this, this is going to turn into a dark color. Now the last thing that we need is, when we're checking this, the animation to take effect, because we added our shrink animation here, but it doesn't take any effect. The animation only then has an effect when the item, the component, has the checked class on it. So let me show you how this is done. We're going to go down to the to-do item style component, and we're going to set here the class name. And again, we're going to use here the isChecked.completed. Only then will this have the class of checked. Okay, so as you can see, if I click on it, then it's going to add that animation. Okay, so now it's time to add items to our list. So let's go to our to-do list. First things first, we're going to import useState. So useState hook, let's go up to React, and let's add here useState. Now let's go down to a component and use our state here. So let's create here const. We're going to have a state of to-dos, and then set to-dos in order to update our state. We're going to assign this to useState, and we're going to add this to an empty array. You know what I'm going to do here? Capital D to-dos. There we go. First, we need to be able to handle our input change. So for this, we're going to create here another state. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to set here input value, and then set input and value. In order to set our input value, we're going to create a function that is going to watch when we're changing something in our input, and also will change here the value, and the value will be now the input value. And because the value is for now just a empty string, we're not going to see here anything if we type something in, because what we need to do now is on change and handle that event. So we're going to handle the change, whatever changes within here, by handling. So let's create here handler, handle input and change. Okay, we're going to go up, create a function const handle input change, send in the event, and whatever is going to be passed in here will be now set as the input value. So e.target.value. Target.value will be now added to the state of input value. Also close this up, and you should be a error function. So now that we have our input, we grab onto the input, we could actually now add it to our to-dos. So add in the submission to our to-dos whatever we type into the input. So I'm going to comment out this console log, and right underneath our input, first I'm going to create a validation checker. So let's type in a comment of validation. This is just a simple validation. We're just going to check if the input value is equal to an empty string, then we should get an alert of add item. So let's try this out. Let's do a refresh. If this is empty and I'm trying to submit this, and let me remove this space here. So if this is empty, I'm trying to add, so submit this, then I'm going to get an alert. So it needs to have something in here. Okay, so now it's adding something, but after it's adding something, I also want to clear this input. So let's also go into our input, and after this is done, we're going to set input value. We're going to reset it to absolutely nothing, so to a empty string. Okay, so let's try this out. If I click on add, it's going to reset the value. Now we're not done yet, because before we resetting the value, we actually need to add something to the list. So let's do here a set to dos. We're going to use now the setter, and we're going to destruct the structure here, and we're going to use here the spread operator to update our to-dos, and then we're going to update our input value and add to them the input value. And also I'm going to use here a to uppercase, because I want everything to be in an uppercase. Now where should they be displayed? Well, they should be displayed down here in our list. So I'm going to go down to the list, comment these three fellows out, and I'm going to take now the to-dos, actually open and close curly brackets. I'm going to take now the to-dos and use the map on them, the map array method, and for each to-do that is in that to-do list, I'm going to grab onto it and also grab onto its index, because I need the index for two things. So let's use an arrow function here, and let's return to-do item. Now our to-do item will have a key of the index, and the rest, well, we need to create props. So let's go into our to-do item, and our to-do item now needs to accept some props. First, it's going to accept here, instead of the number, it's going to accept a index, and it's not only going to accept the index, but because a array starts with 0, I need to add to this index a +1 always. Now let's add our index up here as a prop to the function. We're also going to accept a to-do. And now let's pass the to-do, instead of to-do item, let's pass it down here. And also we could ask the question that if to-do exists, then display that to-do. And now let's display our to-do down as an item. So again, we're going to go up here, and the key, we already have it as an index. Now we can also use our index as the index. So this was just a props, or index number. Should I use index number, or should I use number? Let's use number, and R, and go up here, and R, back in here, and in here also, and R, send it down as a prop. And using the number as the index, so index will be passed down here, and added 1 to it. So you're going to see this would be 1 instead of 0. I'm going to also take out that 1 just for you to see there's going to be 0 at unless. And now we're also going to add to our to-do the to-do. Simple as that. Okay, so let's see what happens if I type in here, go home, and there we go. We have our very first to-do. So let's say we got home, so I can click on it. This is done. And there we go, the item is now checked, and it can be now deleted. Now, can it? Now it cannot be deleted, and now we need to take care of the delete. So let's pass down here a delete to do, which is going to need a handle delete to do. So let's create this function. Also, I think I have my word wrap deactivated. Yep, there we go. Word wrap is now active. And let's create here a const of handle to do, handle delete to do. And this will now depend on the index of the to do. So we're going to pass in here in an arrow function the index, and also a validation. So if the windows, and I'm going to negate this if I'm going to return the windows.confirm with a negative value, so I'm going to cancel it, then this will just return. Oops, not in here. So just going to return and nothing happens. So we're going to type in here, are you sure you want to delete this item? Okay, now also let's go to the to-do item and let's add our delete. So delete our delete to our, well, to our button. So let's do here on click on the button. And if this is triggered, then we want to trigger our delete to do. So we need to pass it down here as a prop and also in here as a prop. So now if I would click on this, I should get this alert. Now if I cancel it, nothing should happen. Now if I want to delete it, let's go back to the to-do list, because the to-dos are actually stored in our to-dos in the array. So in here, we can update our to-do list. But for this, we're going to create a new to-dos. And we're going to assign it first of all to the structure, which should be a capital D. And let's this structure here use a spread operator actually to the structure of to-dos. And now we can take our new to-dos and dot splice and remove the index and then comma and 1. Okay, and now we can use our set to-dos. I'm going to set it to the, well, new to-dos, basically updating that list. So let's try this out and let's see what happens. So if I click on go home, the delete button will appear. If I click on it, let's say I clicked mistakenly, so I can cancel it. If I click on it again and I delete it, then it's going to disappear. So let's add a couple of more items. Let's say item, and just going to type in item and that's this time item and say shoe and so far and so on. So let's delete item and item should be gone. Let's delete shoe and we can delete all of our items now. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the project. Hope you enjoyed it. Give this video a like if you want to support the channel, if you like the video. Also, if you want to stay tuned and be the first to get the coupon code, because they're only going to be free coupon codes, and the rest of them will be with lowest price possible on my new React course. And stay subscribed to the channel and catch you next time. Bye bye.